and welcome to the Apex Weekly Wrap for the week ending July 31st, 2020. I'm Stephanie Taylor from Apex Media.
And I'm Seth Miller from PaxX.Aero.
It's great to be here with you again, Seth, and let's dive straight in because, as per usual, we've got a lot of news to get through. This week we are focusing really heavily on aircraft cabin interiors and seating as the to block or not to block debate continues on. So obviously some airlines and associations are saying that blocking seats is an unsustainable practice, and others are thinking it's a necessary evil in rebuilding passenger confidence.
Absolutely. And, I think the biggest surprise, or not surprise perhaps, is the blend between those, where we're finding more and more airlines trying to come up with a way to make it sustainable, and not ecologically sustainable, but at least financially sustainable for them. And to that end, we're seeing a shift in the way people are trying to charge now for the ability to block seats.
Yeah, absolutely. And so one of the interesting initiatives that you picked out was from GoAir, wasn't it? And it's called GoFlyPrivate, I think.
Yeah, and so GoAir, Indian airline, relatively small in the market, but doing what they can to try to help make customers comfortable there. And the idea is that rather than buying, an extra adjacent seat, which is pretty typical, relatively speaking, for airlines, you can buy as many as you want. So if you want to have a whole row, you get the whole row. If you want to block the row in front of you and the row behind you to give yourself a little bubble on the plane, you can do that too. And, you pay for it. You have to email them. You can't buy it online. There are a couple quirks about the process, but generally speaking, it works. And you can sort of create your own space on board. And, is it really like flying private? No, you're still stuck in the terminal. You still got all the other sort of interaction levels and touch points where there's some challenges. But if you really need to get somewhere within India and you're willing to pay for it, you can buy out, a chunk of cabin.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think they say, don't they, that to get that 2 meter or 6 foot, you do have to take out every row around you, front, side, back. So I don't know whether anyone will have the money or the inclination to do that, but it would be interesting to see. And I do think that, it's not just about middle seats anymore, is it? Because Plusgrade, who are an Apex member, have recently unveiled something called the Dynamic Seat Blocker, which is a very similar product, but it's going to be rolled out. I think they've got 7 airlines who are launching it in August, and it includes Etihad, Oman, and Malaysia Airlines, just to name a few. And basically, I think it's done by bidding, but it's they'll get push notifications about it, the passengers supposedly who are most likely to pay for it. So I don't know how they're doing that targeting.
Yeah, it's a really interesting concept. Same idea of get me some space, make sure people aren't near me, and again, monetizing it. So does this make it a sustainable product? Hard to say. For the Indian low-cost carrier area, maybe you can pay, the low enough amount. If it's a full-service carrier, an Etihad or such, odds are you're not going to pay the full fare for the adjacent seat. Can they find a way to get 2 people next to each other, each to pay, and block that seat between them and, sort of make up the middle ground? Perhaps. So, I like the idea in a sense. The counterpoint to that is, in the U.S., Frontier Airlines a couple months ago tried to sell middle seats blocked and got a huge amount of backlash for people saying, how could you sell safety? How are you charging us for this? So there's a little bit of a risk there, but I think, as we noted, it's not sustainable financially for the airlines to keep blocking them forever. So this is an interesting sort of hybrid option.
So on the other side of the coin, a few weeks ago, we saw some news about a seating concept from a trio of companies. So that's Molon Labe, Simona Boltaron, and Tapas Corporation, didn't we, Seth?
We did. And this is a sort of really interesting combination of expertise from these 3 groups. And what they've done is they've taken the Molon Labe staggered seating product, which is super interesting, super cool, and hasn't quite gotten the traction to get on the planes yet. They've come very close with a couple contracts and bad timing in a couple situations. But they've taken that, they've paired it with the Tapas Corporation's antimicrobial Promesa fabric, and then the Boltaron's thermoformed and antimicrobial seat shells. And putting all of those components together, they seem to have a very unique product and an opportunity that it's got a headrest built in and also an air vent built in, which we've talked about airflow and how that's important for helping control, things on the plane. And what you end up with is a really interesting opportunity and combination from these companies.
I completely agree. So we have actually brought in Matthew Nicholls today as our guest, who's sales director at Tapas Corporation, to tell us more about it. So hi Matthew, thanks for joining us.
Hi guys, thanks very much for having me today on the Weekly Wrap. Really looking forward to some productive conversation. So fire away with as many questions as you'd like.
So a couple of weeks ago, you announced this partnership between Tapas, Boltaron, and Molon Labe. How did that partnership come together, and can you walk us through the product a little bit?
Yeah, good question. So I've known Hank Scott, the CEO of Molon, for quite a while, and I've always found the Molon guys to be very innovative and have some great ideas and solutions. And we were talking very early on in this situation about what was it that we could do to help? What could we do to collaboratively sort of come together as an industry to be able to help airlines and offer them a solution that perhaps worked to reduce sort of passenger anxiety, fear, and combat some of these issues. When we were talking to our airlines, one of the things that they really mentioned was that it needed to be, kind of a long-term solution that fitted within their existing kind of commercial model. And one of the key things that we'd found when we talked to them all was that social distance was one that they were really trying to get to work through, but as long as it remained within the commercial constraints of the models that they were operating. And then surfaces, everybody talks about surfaces, and surface technology was really, really important. So what we found was that the combination of the existing Molon seat with some enhancements and some adjustments really allowed you to have a creative use of space to really maximize that envelope to the highest degree. So the design of the seat kind of really helped solve some of the spatial distancing kind of issues. And then we turned to the materials. And in that respect, we looked at both of the different surfaces. The seat covers are arguably the largest surface area inside the aircraft cabin. And then probably second to that are the thermoplastics from things like the tray tables and the armrests and what have you. So, talking with Boltaron, they had an antimicrobial technology. We already have an antimicrobial technology in our standard sort of product lines. What we were able to do is to work out which bits go where. We tweaked and maximized the seat cover design to ensure that wherever there was contact with a passenger, that you were maximizing that antimicrobial technology, for example. And what we think we ended up with was, a really good solution.
And what about the benefits of this seat versus other seating solutions, which are more focused on heavily blocking the space between the passengers?
When you look at the seat in particular, I mean, Seth, you'll remember from seeing it at our booth at Hamburg last year that you've got this very wide center space, and it's also lower and it's recessed and set back. So what that does is it takes you out of the path and the envelope and the direction of people's coughs and sneezes. So it's taking you directly out of that line of fire. When you combine that then with all the antimicrobial technology that's within it, you really are maximizing that social distance, but within the constraints of this standard passenger envelope.
The Promesa fabric that you've been talking about here uses a silver ion technology. How does that work, and why is it so useful in the hygiene space?
Right, so we've been working on antimicrobial technology for over 10 years. Our mill partner, the baseline manufacturer of the product, Ultra Fabrics, they're the market leader in the medical and dental industry and have been, like I said, for more than 10 years. So this is not a knee-jerk kind of reaction. This is a proven safe technology that's come from those fields. So in terms of how silver ions work, they're very clever little particles. Effectively, what they do is the ions are able to pass through the cell wall where they bind and work with the protein cell inside the microorganism. And what they do at that point is they inhibit replication. So for any infectious disease to grow and spread, throughout a person, a host, and what have you, they have to be able to replicate, which allows them to propagate. And what the silver ion technology does is it effectively prevents replication, which stops the propagation, literally stops it in its tracks, really. So it's an important proven technology. I mean, what we do that's a little bit different too is that we take this tech and we embed it in the polycarbonate top skin, in the surface layers of our products. So, they're non-leaching, they can't leach out, they can't come out, they can't fall out or wash out or any of those kind of things. It's literally there for the lifespan of the product, which is going to be 5 to 10 years. And you don't lose any efficacy over time from that. So it's a pretty strong product. Polycarb is the other benefit of that. Is polycarbonate, that is the gold standard really for resistance to cleaners and disinfectants. So when you look at the approved list from people like CDC and EPA of approved cleaners and disinfectants, the ones that are on the Boeing list, those are all sort of two key product groups, which are quatamoniums, and alcohols. And polycarbs are the gold standard in being resistant to those products. So you can clean polycarbonate based products with quartz or with alcohol with no real risk of any damage to the surface, unlike other polyurethanes, for example, which break down very, very rapidly. Same is true with leather. Both of them break down very rapidly, which is obviously not really desirable.
Okay, and finally, you're hoping to have the design completed by 2021. So what's the response been from airlines so far?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not sure if airlines are really ready for radical change. Although that being said, we had a very good call with one of our airline customers last week, in fact, where they told us for the first time that they were considering much more novel options within the cabin. We didn't think they'd really be too interested in changes that might affect their LOPA, but they said, this is what we want to see. We want to see innovation. We want to see different approaches. We think this is here for the long term and it's going to stay. And we need a solution that allows for that. So, yeah, by all means, show us.
Okay, so thank you so much, Matthew, for joining us. I think you made some fantastic points about, how all across the industry, people are coming together for the greater good. And, when we face adversity like this, it's a real opportunity for innovation to flourish. So it's a really interesting concept, like Seth said, and really interested to see where it goes. So turning to some seriously cool news from this week, Virgin Galactic unveiled the cabin interior on board their first SpaceShipTwo vehicle, which is called VSS Unity. And I tuned into the YouTube event where they unveiled the cabin, and we got to watch a video of Beth Moses, who's their chief astronaut instructor, going up into space in that cabin, and you could just tell that she was completely blown away by the experience. So I can only imagine what it is going to be like for those people who are seeing space for the first time. And I think it's really important to kind of start from that idea of seeing space. They said in the broadcast that was a central element of the design, is that it had to be kind of invisible, because the whole reason you're up there is to look out of the window and see the earth below. So they really had to focus on that as the center design piece.
Yeah, it was a really cool video production that they put together. I also watched it, and some interesting comments they made, like Earth is the light source for their trips, and so as part of that, they've created a lighting environment in the spacecraft that doesn't really do a lot with light. They turn off the lights when you're in space. But they also want to make sure you can see out and see Earth and see into the sort of black nether regions beyond. And so 17 windows for 6 passengers and the pilots. So it's a lot of opportunity to look out. They're sort of halos, they're calling them. So there's handles around the windows so you can grab on when you're in 0G and sort of pull yourself up into the window. That's really neat. You can't bring your own camera on board, so no taking pictures out the window, which, that's why I like a window seat. I'm not sure that's supposed to be a good thing, but they promise there's 16 cameras on board that are going to take pictures of you while you're in 0G, and a giant mirror, actually, in the back of the aircraft or spacecraft. So while you're in 0G floating around and, spinning, you can watch yourself and see that it really is happening with your own eyes. So there's some really interesting things about it. Some mood lighting situation. The London design house Seymour Powell was very involved in it. They had a bunch of other partners. with Land Rover and Under Armour. So it's very sponsored engagements, if you will, but it's a really neat project. My only complaint, I think, is that the IFE screen is way too small. No movies on board.
Definitely no movies. But I love the idea of the mirror. I think, you know, if you haven't got a video of you in space and you're not looking at yourself in your cool uniform, did it even happen? It didn't. So, you know, they're thinking about our narcissistic generation, which is a good thing. So there are 6 passenger seats, like you said, and they're actually mounted on the cabin sidewall to give the passengers that extra space in the cabin when they're in 0G. So it's much wider than, you know, a larger the aisle on a commercial aircraft. And the fabric for the seating as well, you mentioned Under Armour, who designed the uniforms initially, which came out a couple of months ago. They've also designed the fabric on the seat. And one of the things that they said was that they want minimum seams, so there's barely any seams, because I imagine when you've got the G's pressing on you, you know, you can really probably feel things a lot more, and you don't want any irritations. So yeah, like you said, really cool stuff.
Yeah, so transitioning out of 0G back down here to Earth a little bit, we talked about sort of moving around and, you know, having the flexibility and opportunity to do all those things. On airplanes right now, moving around is super important because you don't want to get deep vein thrombosis or other challenges, but also you can't really move around right now on planes. With the flights going on right now, airlines are saying stay in your seat, don't go anywhere, you know, ring a button if you need to go to the bathroom even. So a lot of challenges in the market right now, but there's still concern about health on board and, you know, beyond just the current situation, and trying to stay well fed, well nourished, and, you know, getting your flexibility and your stretching in. And Georgina Dobson has developed a portfolio of in-flight exercise and meditation products under the FLYWELL brand that plays into this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so now we are seeing that the FLYWELL portfolio is expanding into food. So they have collaborated with In.bowl, which is a concept that was created by In-Air Travel Experience together with the aviation nutritionist. Now, they've all known each other for years, but they've only just come together to make this product. And I think it's kind of interesting for a couple of reasons, because it's going to, you know, it plays on the trend of the Buddha bowls and the earth bowls. You see them in every salad bar now. And so not only are they healthy, but they're also going to drastically cut cabin waste, because it's just one thing.
And in addition to cutting the waste, it also cuts down on interaction between crew and passengers. And so we've seen a shift in the catering situation lately towards lower contact, I'll say, and, you know, being able to offer a nutritious option in a single serving sort of consolidated environment. Big win right now.
And finally, on to our final thought for the day. It's some good news. A few weeks ago, we covered that Dymer UVC had their product picked up by Honeywell, who is going to distribute it. It was known as the Germ Falcon and is now just the Honeywell UVC cabin unit. So what's going on there, Seth?
The news this week is that JetBlue has taken on a trial contract with Honeywell, and we got to work on the name, getting it back to Germ Falcon. I can't not call it Germ Falcon. I'm sorry. But they've taken 8 of the units. They're going to run them in their hubs at JFK and Fort Lauderdale to see if they work for 90 days, and potentially then, you know, if they're happy with the solution, roll them out more broadly. So it's nice to see the product gaining some traction and getting, you know, after so long in development, the ability to now finally sort of convert on that and see it rolling out to airlines is pretty cool.
Completely agree. Well, that's it for today. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.